Just now or for a long time?
No, no, just now.
Okay. So viewers, we hope we are live. I think we are live with a new link now, Adrit, or is it the same link we were earlier?
No, no, new link.
Okay. So, there was a small disconnect to the viewers who are watching us. Um, we hope you can see us live properly again. Um, and yeah, great. I think people can watch us again. So to all the viewers, there's a new link, this one. The old link kind of ended abruptly. So as we were talking before we got disconnected, is that, Jacobo had to take this risk by going into this slightly dubious line. And Esipenko has played a very, what do you think, Adrit? B5. Well, according to you, what do you think of a move like B5 on move 12?
Yes, sir. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, take your time. Yeah.
If the queen takes the rook, means if the queen has taken the rook, then the queen would be trapped and he would
And
lose the queen.
and what is the variation you think after Queen A8? How do you think the trap would happen?
Then knight to c knight to c6.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Then the
I'm saying
queen is,
he went knight F3 in the game, but if
yeah.
Queen takes A8, what do you think Black would play if Queen A8?
Then I think black would play knight to c6.
Immediately or after playing something like Bishop B7? Do you think Black would first play Bishop B7 or directly go Knight C6 for Queen A8? Because if we go
Directly
direct,
goes knight to c6.
but if we go directly Knight C6, there is a Queen takes C6, and we lose the knight as well. Actually, because the knight on E5 is controlling the C6 square as well. So actually, what Black should do is Black should first play Bishop B7 for Queen takes A8 and
Okay.
force the Queen because there's only one move, Queen A7, and now
Yeah.
go Knight C6. Might be
Okay.
like strange because by going Knight C6, what are we getting? We're attacking the Queen, but there is a knight on E5. So the
Yeah.
logical question would be like, White will play Knight takes C6, and the Queen is safe. So why is White worried about this? But this is where the problem is. After Knight takes C6, Black will play Queen takes C6, and Black is
Yeah.
basically threatening a checkmate on G2, or Black is also threatening moves like Rook A8 and Rook C8. So it's a very bad position, and also Black is threatening moves like Rook A8 and Rook C8 as well. So there is White. If White tries to, are we making the moves on the board, Adrit, to show the line?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you tell from the first the line?
Yeah. So if Queen takes A8,
Yeah.
Bishop B7,
Yeah.
Queen A7,
Yeah. Then knight
Knight
to
C6.
c6.
Yes.
Then if the
And
knight takes, then queen takes the knight.
yes, and now we are threatening a mate on G2. So
Yeah.
there is really like, if let's say if white goes rook F2 to stop the mate on G2, then you get checkmated on H1 because there's no escape square for the king. So queen H1 would be a mate. So in case if white plays something like E4, let's say in that position, to block that diagonal completely from the queen and bishop,
Yeah.
then what black would do is black would go like bishop to B8. and then the queen on a7 is trapped. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm pretty sure Yakubo did not want him to go into that because that's basically like equivalent to resignation, that position,
yeah,
because all the white pieces are undeveloped, rook, knight, bishop, and a very strong control of that, diagonal is there. No, I meant bishop b8, from d6 to b8, trapping the queen. Bishop d6 to b8, and trapping the queen, and the queen has nowhere to go here. So it's like, it's just very bad because black will break through on that diagonal with some sort of c4 or f5 and remove the e4 pawn, and the checkmate will happen on g2 or f3 somewhere on the diagonal. So because of this, Yakubo went back in the game. He did not
yeah.
capture the
The
a8. It's a
rook.
poisoned rook. He went knight f3. And as we expected, bishop b7,
Then
kicking the
queen to
queen away.
f5.
Yeah. So that's, I think, a very useful lesson here, I would say, for players, especially around, I would say, players who are generally very greedy in capturing material. I think this is a very good example. Not all material that is offered leads to a material advantage. So technically, white does have a material advantage here, but there is a rule or kind of like a logic in chess. If if you sacrifice a pawn and you are able to, let's say, open up one file and one diagonal, or two diagonals, say two files. If the pawn sacrifice helps you to open up two of this, one and one of this, or two of either of the things that I was mentioning, then most likely that pawn sacrifice is actually worth sacrificing. It's very much, you will get the compensation for the sacrifice. And as we were talking, in this situation, black actually got two diagonals and one file opened up, which is the E file for the rook and the C8H3 diagonal for the bishop and the B7H1 diagonal for the bishop as well. So this pawn sacrifice on D5 becomes fully justified for black if we go by that, the logic or the chess rule that I was just mentioning now. Yeah.
Yeah,
And Adit, are you there? Just
yeah, yeah.
curious.
I'm there.
To the audience who are watching the stream, as we mentioned earlier, like, feel free to share your questions. I have a strong feeling this game between Yakubov and Esipenko um, is definitely not going to be won by, like, it's going to either Yakubov is going to get checkmated, or I think Esipenko will find a way to quickly force a repetition in a very advantageous position. So it's going to be like how ambitious Esipenko is really, I think, in this position. If he wants to, if he wants to push for a win, he can, because he has a fantastic position. Or he might think, okay, all he requires is only a draw to win the third spot and qualify for the candidates. So if he'll just find some ways to just find a repetition. So we are going to see which path he chose, and it's purely in, Esipenko's hand how the game is going to go forward. Yakupov is more of in a defensive mode. He's more going to react to the ideas or the threats that Esipenko is going to create, and Yakupov will be more figuring out how to stop one threat after another that Esipenko poses to Yakupov here. Yeah.
So audience, what do you feel that who will win the game? Just let me know in
And
the comment.
Adrit, anything you want to add to this position? Something like that?
Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, you are clearly audible. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So I was just saying, like, do you want to add anything to the notes here or something like other points, or do you want to? Did you hear the ideas that I was mentioning?
Yeah, yeah.
As yeah,
I've
sure.
heard. I think in this position, black should play knight to d7, activate the knight, and that knight can jump onto knight f6 square, and
It's
the rook
possible.
will be
Yeah,
connected, and he can after that he can centralize the rooks.
definitely. That's a very solid idea. I'm also thinking an idea like knight c6 might be interesting. The reason why I think knight c6 could be interesting is because black could actually be threatening to play knight d4 and force the removal of the f3 knight by exchanging knight takes d4 e d4. And also another thing is one line that white is really hoping uh, to play and somewhat survive is white wants to play e4 at some point and try to kind of control the that open diagonal or limit the control of the b7 bishop. If you play e4, the king might feel bit safe. But knight c6, and if let's say white plays e4, there are moves like knight b4 and attacking the d3 pawn, and also the c2 knight c2 ideas are there. That is definitely one of the lines that black will consider. Knight d7, knight f6 is also fairly standard, playable. Like, but I think for knight d7, white will still play e4. And the only thing is we won't be able to. Oh, okay. Knight d7 is played on the board, the move that you have predicted.
Yeah,
So will we see e4? I don't know. I think one idea that Esipenko is hoping for is if white plays e4 at some point, black does want to play c4 and weaken the e4 pawn by exchanging dc4, and then he'll go some rook a e8 and put pressure on e4. I think that's what is in his mind. And c4 also opens up two things that I was saying earlier. It opens up the c file and also additionally opens up that g1 a7 diagonal where the bishop could go to c5 with a check or something and pose a lot of problems for the king. So absolutely a dominating position, I would say, for
Esipenko.
Esipenko. Yeah, let's see what he does as white here. And to the viewers who are watching the stream, if you have any thoughts or your analysis on the position or your feedback on how you've so far followed the World Cup and what you liked about this tournament, did your favorite players get knocked out too early or did they qualify, and were you predicting Wei? Share your thoughts. We'll try to keep it as entertaining as possible because this is going to be at least 1 to 1.5 hours more of stream. We'll take breaks in between, obviously, but I definitely think this game will end before, let's say, if you want to take a guess, how many moves do you think this game will go, Adrit?
I think 30 moves.
That seems about where I was going to be somewhere in the range of 30 to 40, somewhere around 35, I was going to say. Yeah, so we have, I think, about 20 odd moves is what my prediction is also for this remaining, because, the attack is just too fast. And if the rook on a8 develops, that's the last undeveloped piece for black. But if you look at white, you see the rook on a1, knight on b1, bishop on c1, three undeveloped pieces. And the queen on f5 is very poorly positioned. It can be easily attacked by moves like g6 and all that. So I have a feeling there's going to be a very strong attack on the white king, and the game will end by move 30 to 35. I think 35 is where I would guess if this game's how many moves this game would take. Yeah.
So, sir, what do you think that tomorrow who is gonna to win, Sindarov or Wei?
Great question. I have picked Wei, or I would pick Wei in this you know situation, because I have a feeling he has a lot more experience in these time controls, and he's much more older player. He's been around the elite player for a long period of time. So I would definitely pick Wei Yi in this scenario. And Sundaro is also actually very good in fast time controls. He's played, like, let's say, the freestyle chess tour. I think he beat Nakamura, if I'm not wrong, and so on. But my pick is Wei Yi. What about you?
I will pick Sindarov because he's the young one, and like he has won the he has beaten Hikaru Nakamura in freestyle chess, who is
Mm-hmm.
the demon of time control.
Yeah, actually, I think I mixed up the names when I was talking a bit earlier. I was going to say, like, it was Sindaro who beat Nakamura, but
Yeah,
still I would pick Wei. My pick is still Wei, not Sindaro, because my kind of reason still stays the same, that Wei is more experienced of the two, and he's been in the world elite player or in the top 15, 20 for, let's say, around I would say close to 10 years. He's been there somewhere in the top 2700 plus, 2720 plus, and so on. So uh, like, I have a feeling that experience here of handling the pressure will help. And Wei is also pretty good in fast time controls. Like, imagine if Wei was not good in fast time controls. Think from a psychology perspective. Swayze had the white pieces today, right?
yeah.
And the thing is, if you have the white pieces and if you're not pushing for a win, like in today's classical game, that means you have immense belief in your skills, that you can outplay this opponent in faster time controls. If not, you would have played a longer fighting game to show that I want to push for a win with white today itself, or at least try to play for a game. But we see Wei Yi was the one who kind of forced the draw today, right? So Wei Yi strongly believes his skills in the faster time control is better than Sundaro. That is one. Another thing, if players or if anyone analyzed Wei's games carefully in the World Cup, he has played about, I think, around 5 or 6 games with black side in Petrov in World Cup so far. And one game was against Magsudlu, against Esipenko, against two or three more very strong players. And white players were not able to beat him against his Petrov. If they played e4, he was playing e5. Basically, you get a Petrov. Arjun Erigesi also could not beat him in Petrov, all of it. And, so his Petrov is so good. Even yesterday in round game one against Sindaro, I believe he played a Petrov. So as black side, he feels very confident that if you play e4, I can just hold you to a draw with Petrov. So his logic is, if you want to play for a win with white, you play some d4 or knight f3 against me. I mean against Away, and he strongly believes in his opening preparation. And at the same time, I think his logic is he can try to create some chances when he has the white side in the faster time control. Yeah, Adrit, does that make sense? What do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. And here in the game of Yakuboev has e4 has been played, I think.
Mm,
Yeah, e4 has
Yeah,
been played.
yes, e4 has been played. Yeah. So as I was saying, right,
Yeah,
this diagonal has to be kept closed, whatever it might be, because if that diagonal is open, it's basically checkmate.
yeah.
And Adrit, what do you think you would play here as black? Think about it as like, a lot of options look interesting for black. What you would do here?
I would firstly play c4,
Okay.
opening the
And
bishop diagonal, and if it takes, means d takes c4, then queen takes c4, threatening the bishop takes e4.
very valid ideas. Absolutely. I would actually go even a bit further. And when white plays dc4, I might not even actually be bothered to play queen c4. I might just directly jump and go some rook e8 or something, trying to immediately attack the e4 pawn. Because, black's key there is not material, but it is mainly about generating activity quick. Yeah. Queen c4 is also a very active move, no doubt about it. A serious candidate move. But I believe just simply rook e8 or knight c5 would be more in my consideration, topmost move in terms of candidates over, let's say, queen c4. But yeah, c4 is what I would also seriously consider. And I think it has been played on the board as well. Correct,
Yeah,
Adrit? If I'm
yeah,
not wrong?
it is
Yeah.
played.
So, to audience who are just now logging in and you're not sure what's going on here, you're currently watching the Chess Gajas YouTube channel. I'm Grandmaster Priyadarshan, and I'm joined by a co-host today in our channel, Adrit, a very young co-host we have on channel. So we are talking about the game from his perspective as like a intermediate chess player, and I'm sharing my inputs as from my perspective as a grandmaster and also as a FIDE trainer on how I look at the position. And the major thing here is mainly weakening that e4 pawn. That's what black is all trying to do, because if the d3 pawn is exchanged, e4 pawn is extremely weak. And if the e4 pawn goes forward to like e5, then black kind of achieves the mission, which is the complete opening up of that particular diagonal h1 to a8. And there is no light square bishop for white to kind of challenge the black's bishop on b7. So that is what c4 is all about. Yeah.
Bishop to e3 has been played.
Okay. So what do you think about it, Adrit? And can you maybe hold on to the live stream for a few minutes? I'll take a quick break and be back, Adrit, so you can talk about the
Okay,
position on your own. Yeah.
okay, sir.
I'll just be back in about 5 minutes. Yeah. So you
Yeah,
can just explain what you think about the position. Yeah.
yeah. In this position, black is type of dominating the position, but here white plays bishop to e3, trying to block the bishop check, right? Trying to block the bishop check. I think in this position black should take the pawn because the c file will be open and the c file will be open. And think that white played knight to d knight to d2. Let's see what happens after bishop to e3. What are your thoughts about the moves? Let me know in the comments. Or I think he can just centralize the rook, his rook, or can play rook a to d8. I'm telling that because here, if after that he takes the pawn, then I have to take it back with my queen. Then, or else my knight will be hanging. Or else he can just centralize the rook with rook a to e8. Rook a to e8 is a better move than rook a to d8 as engine is suggesting me. Putting pressure on the e4 pawn, threatening to take the pawn and threatening the queen. So in this position, black should play rook a to e8. Let's see what happens. Yasipenko is taking his time that and thinking that how to dominate the position fully so that white can resign. Yasipenko is today on the mood of attacking. And Yakubboev is just defending. And as my perspective, the best way to defense is to counter attack. But in this position, white doesn't have any counter attack. White is type of losing, and black is dominating the position. So now, as Black is thinking and taking his time, let's take a small break and we will be back after some moment.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. I'm back. So I believe Adrit is also on a short break. So we've got basically C4 has been played and Bishop E3 has been played by Yakubov. And Esipenko is kind of thinking. So he has some interesting options in hand. First thing is, okay, you might all be thinking, why not C takes D3, right? It's a pawn, and currently black is one pawn down. So if C D3, we get the pawn back, and it looks great. But the problem or thing that most likely Esipenko is considering is, if C D3, there is knight B D2, and then the D3 pawn is well blockaded, the E4 pawn is strongly defended, and you know that G1 A7 diagonal is well controlled by the bishop, and then white can go some rook A C1, try to attack the queen, get some activity, all of that. So so Esipenko is most likely debating whether he should take the pawn like that, even though it's absolutely free pawn to capture, or I think he's debating should he try something like bishop c5 or knight c5. Knight c5 looks tempting to me because one, white cannot play d4 or anything because e4 pawn is hanging. And if white goes some knight d2, then instead of dc3, I mean, instead of, sorry, CD3, it will be like knight takes D3. So the knight would be in a very dominating position on D3, controlling C1 and E1 squares, and will be very close to the white's king on G1. And also at the same time, B2 pawn would be hanging around the pressure and so on. And if required, the knight can move out and black can create activity down the d file. So with all this in mind, I think Yasipenko is still figuring out, should I go knight c5 or should I play cd3? I think, or maybe he's considering something like rook a e8 to start, but I don't think that's his primary consideration here. And one thing that white needs to be quite careful about seeing the position is white's queen on f5 is kind of in a sticky situation. It may get trapped if white is careless. For example, there are only like 3 to 4 escape squares for the queen right now: h5, h3, g4, and g5. If black manages to play something, let's say like knight f6 and bishop c8 together, the queen would have to go to g5. But let's assume there's the h6 thrown in as well. There's very high chances the queen can get trapped. So Yakubov needs to be very careful on how he protects his queen as well in this situation. So this is majorly what is happening over here. And I think there are some questions on the chat as well, uh, Adrit. Yeah. So Adrit, are you there? Sure, sure. Yeah, sure. So Reet Jaiswal, thanks for your question on the chat. So yeah, let me explain what I see so far. For example, where did Nodirbeck go wrong? I mean, he kind of went wrong in purpose, you can say. What I mean by that is that he had to play a line where he can create some chances. So, right out of the opening today, he played d3 in move, I think move 6 or 5 very early on, and instead of the very standard d4. But if he had played d4 on move 6, it would have transposed to a Catalan today. And Catalan is a very, theoretically very well developed variation. There are so many forcing lines for both white and black, and I'm pretty sure that is not what Yakubo wanted. He didn't want it to play a theoretical fight, because in 2600, 2700 level and all, these players, if they decide, okay, I'm trying to force a draw today as black, they can, like 90% of the time they can force a draw with black, because they'll play a very forcing line in most lines. For example, let's say for e4, something like Berlin or Petrov. If d4, there is definitely some lines in Queen's Gambit accepted, or some sort of Queen's Gambit declined, very forcing situations, and so on. So with all this in mind, Nodirbek Yakubov, he went for this d3 and knight e5, and he didn't have much of a choice, because the way that Sipenko responded to it was actually pretty good. He played this queen c7 idea, bishop d6, a6, and the only option that Nodirbek really had was if he wanted to kind of pull back his knight to um, f3 after playing knight e5. But if you go back to f3 from knight e5, you are just basically like saying, okay, I made a mistake and I'm coming back, and you're like 2 tempos down, because from f3 you went to e5, and from e5 you're coming back to f3, right? And if you end up with 2 tempos down straight out of the opening, then you are kind of like, not going to get anything. Most likely you'll end up anyway in a worse position as white. So that is the reason why, in this game, Noderbek, uh, went into a position like this, because here there is some complexity to the position. Even though he's clearly worse, there is some complexity, and he's hoping that that can help him create some chances in the game. And again, I repeat, this is because of this extraordinary situation that he is in, where he has to win this game. a draw is not going to help him in any way, and that is because he lost the previous game against Resipenko. Yeah. And Reed, about your other question here, like, you know, Arjun was better against Wei in Petrov, and you think it doesn't work out for him. And actually, in that game, for a long period of time, I think Wei was doing fine. It's not like Wei was worse at any point because of the opening phase. And, so confidently, like, imagine if a line doesn't work out for you, you will not repeat it again. But Wei has been repeating the line consistently after beating Arjun as well. He has used that line. So, he strongly believes in his ability, and most likely if he faced any inconvenience, let's say in one of those games, but which he had not, in my opinion, but if he had, by now his team of assistants and seconds would have figured out a much better way to equalize. The reason why I'm so confidently saying this is because today, in with one of my students in the classes I was talking about, we were actually discussing Petrov from Black side, and we were going through one game after another of VE, and we saw like how I think round three or round four, some of it, and one of it he got this in the Petrov. There is a line with knight c3, which is e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight takes e5, d6, knight f3, knight takes e4, and knight c3. So in this line, in one game, in earlier rounds, he had gone bishop e6, but like a round or two later, he went bishop f5. I'll try to remember which one it is. Let me quickly check my notes. But as I could see, is he's so confident in his skill set that he comes back again and uses a slightly better version of what he played earlier, and then makes a draw without much of an issue, and so on. So that is so. For example, we also had a draw with Sam Sevian in this World Cup with Petrov, with Maksudlu, and with Petrov, and the major thing, again, Arjun's game was also there. Esipenko's game was there, and so because of this is why I believe he's well prepared. And yeah, so for example, against Esipenko, he went bishop f5, Wei in one of the games on move 8 in Petrov. And when they reached, I think that against Esipenko again, but in faster time control tie breaks, he went. Actually, no. He went first played bishop e6 against Resipenko in classical, and when they moved to faster time controls, he moved to the bishop f5 variation in Petrov. So he fixed it the next day itself, found a much cleaner way to equalize, and kind of like neutralize White's threats. So because of this, and in general, I found Vegi's preparation in Petrov to be really really good. If so many 2700 plus players are unable to kind of break or like score a win with White side against means he has very good and very solid preparation as black side in Petrov. So that is what we are seeing here, and I hope I answered your queries, Reeth Jaiswal. So stay in the chat. If you have additional queries, please feel free to share them. I would be very happy to answer those and discuss other things. And also, if you found it useful, please ask your friends to join the chat as well, so we can make it as interactive as possible. And Adrit, are you
Yes,
back?
sir, I'm back.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And knight to c5 is being played.
Great. So kind of we were anticipating this move as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
because maybe can you make those moves on the board to show like what's the idea with c takes d3 that doesn't
yeah, I
work
have
out?
showed the all the variations.
Okay, great, great. Yeah. So that's the point. So knight c5, now, there's pressure on d3, pressure on
Yeah,
e4, and yeah, it's It's clearly in black's favor. I mean, huge advantage. And another thing to note for players is if the d3 pawn falls, and let's say black plays g6, the queen, if it moves, e4 could actually be hanging. So that's another risk for white. So for example, let's say knight d2, and then black plays knight takes d3, and then black uh, and again I repeat this, white would absolutely like to play e5, but here it's bad because you open up that very strong diagonal h1 to a8. So white really wants the pawn to stay on e4, not move at all, and black really wants to remove the pawn from e4. So it's basically a battle of the e4 square or the e4 pawn. If e4 pawn is gone, black's advantage is like very visible. If e4 pawn stays, white can stay in this game for a longer period of time and hope to create some chances. So black will use all sorts of pressure on e4. It could come via rook a e8 hitting on e4. It could be queen c6 adding more pressure on e4. Even if white's knight is on d2, black could also consider playing something like g6 and playing f5. So g6 to push the queen away, and then play f5, and white either EFI or E5, white would be forced to play, and both the decisions black would be very happy with, because that achieves the goal of opening up that diagonal, weak light square diagonal of H1 to A8. Yeah.
I think here white should mm, play e to e5.
You mean pawn E5 in this
Yeah,
position?
yeah. But it weakens the king.
Yes, it does. And as I mentioned, E5 is what black wants white to play. So, black would be very happy to drop back the d6 bishop to e7 for a move, so that if you go back bishop e7, then black will play queen c6 or knight takes d3, and then add pressure on the diagonal. So now, what I think Yakubo is figuring out is, maybe should I go knight c3 with the idea of going something like knight d5, trying to add one more piece in that diagonal to minimize the pressure of the b7 bishop. Something that might be is what I think he's seriously considering, because he's realizing that he's in big danger or in big trouble, and knight d2 might not be active enough, and knight c3, knight d5 looks interesting to me, as some sort of counterplay at least that he can try to generate in the process. Yeah. And what else do you think, Adrit, over here?
Yeah.
Or do you think anything else that white might play instead of knight c3? Any ideas that you are considering here?
Yeah, sir, knight to d2 connecting the rooks because and minimizing the pressure on e4. That's the possible move.
Possible, yeah. Let's see what white's going to do here. Some viewers might consider, I think, in this position, something like bishop takes c5. I would like to explain what might
Fully,
happen if bishop.
yeah, fully weakens the king, and uh, black will recapture the bishop with a check.
Yes, but I think the variation that Yakubo would definitely consider is bishop takes c5, bishop takes c5 check, and play d4. So his idea would be like, uh, you know, Then he wants to go d5 and push the pawn so that there is two pawns on that a1 I mean h1 a8 diagonal. If you can make the moves on the board,
Yeah, I
white
have
playing.
made moves on the board.
Okay, so bishop takes c5, bishop c5, d4, blocking the check, and then trying to somehow go something like king g2 with the idea of playing d5. And but the problem with this approach for white is one, black has double bishops, and both the bishops are aiming at the king, literally. And all black needs is to destroy the e4 d5 pawn chain. And black can easily destroy that by going something like g6, kicking the queen away from f5 square, and then going f5 himself as black. So e4 pawn would be very vulnerable, and if e4 pawn falls, the d5 pawn will fall. And then, if e file also gets opened up, you get added activity down the e file along with the diagonals of h1 a8 and g1 a7. So this is kind of like the refutation if bishop c5 is being considered on the board right now. Yeah, so it's kind of like a big problem for Yakubov here. He sees all these different lines. None of them are satisfactory. All of them, you'll. So especially in these kind of situations, what will kind of go through in the player mind is like, one, obviously he'll be very nervous or kind of under pressure to perform, and at the same time, you will see all these kind of ghosts in the different lines you're calculating. You will be like, oh, this line gets refuted because for this reason, this line gets refuted because for this reason. So all the lines, they'll get refuted for some reason or other. And so now you have to pick a line where at least you can retain some sort of a fighting chance or a hope. So when you are constantly seeing lines where you are clearly bad again and again and again, your confidence will definitely take a kind of a hit. You will feel a bit frustrated with the position because you are surrounded with bad options or bad moves, whatever you choose, with possible like bad outcomes. So you have to pick from bad options what's the best kind of. Yeah, so it's psychologically tough, and he has about 40 minutes, and as we did predict, the game will get over between move 30 to 35.
35.
Yeah, so we are still about 18, 19 moves to reach there, and I have a strong feeling it will not go to move 40, and most likely in the first time control itself, there will be a decisive, like the game will end before they go to the second time control. So let's wait and see what's going to happen. Yes, yeah. And to viewers who are just now logging into our stream, in case you're wondering what exactly we are doing right now, we are talking about the FIDE World Cup's final match between Yakubov and Esipenko, but they are not playing for the title. It is actually Vei and Sindaro who are playing for the title. This game between Yakubov and Esipenko is for the third place match. And why we are not talking about the Vei Sindaro game is because they played a very quick um, draw. Basically, in around 30 moves, the game was over. They just traded pieces very quickly and they agreed to a draw in like less than 15 minutes from the start of the game. So that is why we are not talking about that game. But uh, we are talking about the Sipenko game because it's still live and still it's going on. And we have some moves on the board, Adrit, I think. Can you explain it to the audience? Yeah.
So white played pawn to e5, threatening the bishop, and the bishop has to move back, so it does. And uh, now I think he can just black can just take the d pawn, or can just play rook a to d8. I think rook a to d8 would be a better move, activating the piece.
But first, it's white to play now. What do you think white will play here?
Yeah, I think white will play d4,
Possible, yeah,
but
definitely.
it's locking the bishop.
Yeah, but in a way, if you think of it, white does want to keep the position closed because we are going to a very principled chess logic. If your opponent has double bishops, generally that side would prefer to keep a lot of the open files and diagonals. So as white does not have the double bishop, but black does have the double bishop, white would prefer to keep the position fairly closed because the bishops comparatively don't play as good as they would if the position is open. So d4 would keep the, at least the g1 a7 diagonal closed in the process. Yeah, because if you play d takes c4 and let's say b takes c4 does get played, the g1 a7 diagonal is also additionally open in along with the h1 a8 diagonal. So two open diagonals is much more riskier for the white king, but at least d4 means only the. So let's say if white plays d4, where would you put the knight, Adrit?
Then knight to a a4, then b3, and I will take the pawn to open the queen means c file. After that, white will recapture it back with his pawn and attacking my knight. So the knight will go back uh, to b6,
Okay,
and after that the position is slightly equal.
okay. So the way we should approach this position is so there are different ways you can evaluate a position. I mean, like different components are there to evaluate a position. The major thing being king safety is the first and most important thing when you evaluate a position. Because imagine you have even an extra queen, extra rook on the board, but imagine if you get checkmated, it doesn't have any value, all the extra material that you have on the board, because if you get checkmated, it's game over. So king safety becomes like the most important aspect of any position in terms of evaluation of the position. And here, that is the biggest thing that white is suffering from. If imagine if the same position, just for a second, imagine if white did not have the b1 knight, but had a bishop sitting on g2, it's a completely different position. Like altogether, white's position is much fine. White has center control, great position for white.
Yeah,
But the problem is that the bishop is not there, as we know. And so king safety is the biggest problem that white is suffering from here. And in addition to that, so if let's imagine your kings are fairly safe or one side's king is way better, the generally the next component of a position that you look for is piece activity. So if so it's basically king safety, then activity of pieces or piece activity, however you want to say it. So here that is also clearly in favor of black, because black is yet to only develop the a8 rook, whereas white has to develop the a1 rook, white has to develop the b1 knight, and also the fact is the rook on f1 is not that great, queen on f5 is misplaced. So even the developed pieces are not like so well developed for, or like are not in a great square for white. But for black, whereas the queen on c7, bishop on b7, knight on c5, all of them are in fantastic squares from where they are doing a lot of things in the board. So
yeah,
that is the major thing to note. They are doing so many things, and they are in great squares. So king safety as well as activity of pieces is clearly in favor of black. The third aspect of any position only is material. So, so if you are way ahead in king safety and activity of pieces, generally you won't get or you won't be much worried about material, even if you are down one pawn or two pawns or some exchange under pawn. If you clearly have the advantage in these other aspects of the position, which is especially king safety and activity of material, you won't be concerned much. So did we have any moves on the board, Hadrat?
No,
Has been played?
yeah, b takes c4.
Oh, so he took the pawn. Okay.
Yeah,
And now, what do you think? How will white develop his knight? C3 or D2? Where do you think white will put the knight?
I think c3 is a better square because it is preventing the black knight from coming to a4.
Possible. Yeah, that's could be one reason. Any other ideas?
And if knight b to d2 attacking the pawn, the black knight will uh,
But knight C3 also does that, right? Because it also does control the
yeah,
E4
yeah.
square. So knight C3 or knight D2 both has their own plus and minus,
Yeah,
basically. Um, the major thing of knight c3 that I see is, in terms of positive thing, it still has some pressure on d5 square, some control on d5, so that the white might go some rook a d1 and knight d5 in the long term, something like that. But in comparison, I look at knight d2 slightly more defensive move because it defends the f3 knight, gives additional protection to the knight, and has some pressure on the c4 pawn, but that is not really, I think, the primary goal of knight d2 to capture the c4 pawn, because I don't think black really cares much if white captures the c4 pawn in this situation. White, because black's majorly focusing all his energy in pressurizing on the d file or on that h1a diagonal. So c4 pawn is not even on his priority list, basically. So, and about the point that you were mentioning about knight a4, I think it is like, how do you say, like it's like a distraction for black if black tries to go for the b2 pawn, because black's goal, imagine it like this. So here black's goal is basically to go after the white's king. It white black wants to create chances on the open file or diagonal. So black is least concerned, I would say, about a b2 pawn right now. And black would want to, let's say, imagine this position if black managed to get the rook to d3, something like that, rook a d8, rook d3, and adding pressure on the e3 bishop, the f3 knight, all of it. So the goal here for black is to go after the white's king. So strong players generally, they will not get distracted by these kind of like pawns, because it is like, so it is, you can imagine it in a way like, imagine if there is a dog that is always barking at you and you want to
yeah,
kind of be friendly with it. You will give some biscuits and try to make it your friend. So imagine if the dog's primary role is to guard your home, And if the dog does get distracted in getting biscuits from strangers, it's not going to do its kind of like role. Same kind of thing is where I would say with this pawn. If white offers the pawn as a distraction, and if black goes after the b2 pawn and gets distracted, then black will kind of forget the goal with which he started the whole sequence of lines here, kind of a thing. And as black, the major idea is once again go after the king and not anything in the queen side. So black will try to generate activity in d file, in the h1 a8 diagonal, or on the g1 a7 diagonal. This is where the focus will clearly be. And another thing to note that maybe maybe in the back of the mind for Yakubov could be a concern is he has actually significantly fallen behind on the clock. About 15-minute difference is there in time. He has only 29 minutes, and he has to make about 20 to 22 moves, I think, if I'm not wrong here, to get to the time control, something of that sort. Yeah. So first of all, are they following a 40 move time control here, Adrit? Are you aware of anything of the time control of this tournament?
No.
I'm not sure if the players get an extra time. I think they do get. That's what my memory serves me right. Yes. Yeah. So yes, the time control of this tournament is 90 minutes. And in the first 40 moves, if you manage to like you reach 40 moves, then you get an additional 30 minutes. And throughout the game, for every move, you get a 30-second increment. So, if they reach 40th move, both sides will get added 30 minutes on their clock, half an hour. So, but as we are predicting so far, based on how this game's going, they are not going to reach the 40 move mark even. I think the game will end way before that. And to the audience who are streaming, or I mean, who are logging in just now to watch this stream, uh, what is going to happen in, let's say, Sindaro Wei tomorrow, because they drew both their classical portion of games, is they're going to play a tiebreakers tomorrow. And how generally tiebreaks work in FIDE World Cup is that they will play two games. First, they'll play two games of 15 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. So one game Sindaro will be white, one game Wei will be white. So they'll swap the colors. And let's assume if those both the games also end in a tie, either both games end in a draw or both games one side wins. Then they'll go to the next tiebreaker match, which is like much faster time control. So originally we saw 15 plus 10 time control. The second tiebreaker matches or set of matches would be with 10 minutes with 10 seconds increment. And let's say for some reason that also ends in a tie, which has happened earlier. We have seen like players going all the way up to even Armageddon. So after 10 plus 10, if that also ends in a tie, the players go for even more faster time control, which is 5 minutes per side plus 3 seconds increment. And here also they get to play only two games in all the levels. And for some reason, if that also ends in a tie, then they go for a 3 minutes plus 2 seconds increment. So basically, from starting from something like a rapid time control, you start to come all the way to a blitz time control, and you stop there. You don't go to bullet or hyper bullet. You stop at the bullet, and then you play a sudden death game where there is kind of like a time bidding happens. Generally, we call it like the Armageddon format. If the 3 minutes plus 2 seconds time control also ends in a tie. So this is what will happen tomorrow in the tiebreak match between Sandaro and Wei. Yeah.
Yeah, so knight to d2 has been knight b to d2 has been played on the board. Then
Okay.
Esipenko has really means fastly replied with knight to d3, attacking the king. Means all pieces are looking for the king. Then white played h4.
Okay.
Actually, what does this h4 works? I means giving space to the king to run away, right?
Yes, it is basically there is a German word for it called like Luft, which means basically kind of giving escapes pathway for the king. It's kind of like how when you play H6 or H3, you clear back rank. H4 is extended way to clear back rank, but it's not just that. I feel why he didn't play H3, but he went H4. There's, I think, a very crucial reason. Maybe you should highlight this if you are drawing arrows or making the moves on the board, Adrit. Because
Yeah.
if you play H3, and can you find something very bad for white if H3 is played? What do you think black would play if white had played H3 instead of H4? Guess. To all the viewers, take a guess. There is a brilliant line for black after H3 if white had played H3 instead of H4. It's a very nice tactic that you can find out or if you can guess it. Have you found anything, Adrit, that could
No,
be okay? Take your time. Think. That's a very nice line. I'm sure you can find it. Focus on, what is the drawback of H3. You'll find the idea most likely
no,
instantaneously.
I have found bishop to c5.
That is a possibility. But there is something even more like, immediately winning here for black than bishop c5. Bishop c5 is strong, but not as forceful and winning as the idea that black can play. What is the problem of H3? Think about that address. Why is H3? What is the problem of H3? Identify that first. Then you can find the answer kind of easily. Any ideas, Adrit?
Yeah, c3.
Okay, so the major drawback of H3, I would say there are two or three. One is whenever you push upon or move any piece, you occupy a new square. So that square most likely might have been aimed by another piece of from your own side to reach that square. So by playing H3, you take away the H3 square. That is one drawback. Another drawback of H3 is that the G3 pawn weakens because H2 pawn was defending G3. By playing H3 or weakening the G3 pawn. The major problem of H3 is black will play G6. And where will the white queen go?
White can go queen to g4, the only square left for white,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then
And
the queen is trapped. Bishop to c8.
you can play bishop c8, or much better is h5.
Okay, h5.
You just trap the queen with the pawn itself. Even if you go bishop c8, it's actually not fully trapped. There is a
Yeah,
way for
then
white to
pawn,
escape.
then pawn to f5.
Exactly, f5. And the thing is, if let's say black plays bishop takes f5, white can play queen takes c4.
Okay,
And the queen is supported by the d2 knight. So white is doing fine. So but if you play h5 in that situation, right, it's trapped by force. So you see why Norderbeck did not go h3, but he went h4. He wants to create an escape square for the king. His goal is kind of to put the king on h2 and put the rook on g1, something like that, so that both h1 as well as g2 square is covered by the rook. And also another additional thing about h4 kind of it is, he might at some point in time might think of going something like knight g5. And if black does play bishop g5, he might consider playing h takes g5 and try to open up things on the h file and try to generate an attack. But it is not going to happen immediately. It's a very long term plan. But this is kind of the reason why h4 was played and not h3, and as we can see, Sipenko is taking his time.
yeah,
It's a fantastic position for black. I think majorly what, if I have to take a guess, what he's debating is, maybe should I just go and grab the b2 pawn and play some c3, something like that? Or should I bring my last undeveloped piece into the game, like rook a d8? Or should I maybe try to exchange the bishop with bishop c5? But bishop c5, I don't think is on top of his list. I think he's most likely considering knight b2 or rook d8. I think
I
one or the two is his
a
major
to
choices.
e8 will be the best move, dominating the position.
Yeah, logically, yes. Rook d8 makes the most sense, and uh, but I think he's just figuring out, because knight b2 is also actually not bad at all, because knight b2 looks very tempting enough to just start capturing and push the pawn and generate some activity. But some things that maybe we need to be aware of, let's say if knight takes b2, and if white plays something like knight e4 or something, black can kind of confidently think of going queen c6. The reason is, imagine for knight takes b2, if we are making the
I'm,
moves on the board,
yeah,
Adrit,
I'm
yeah,
making the moves.
yeah, knight takes b2, knight e4. And let's imagine, for just the sake of analysis, black plays something like a5, a random move on the board. Okay. White has some very nice ideas here. White could go knight eg5 or knight fg5, one, trying to target the h7 pawn. Another thing is the knight f6 check after a5. And the point being, if g takes f6, e takes f6, now white is threatening to play queen g5 check and go queen g7 and checkmate the black king. So it's very risky to, like, that is why after knight takes b2, knight e4, I think queen c6 is a good move, because if knight f6 check, black can happily capture g takes f6, because if e takes f6, you can just play queen takes f6 or bishop takes f6, as the queen is defending or controlling the f6 square as well, and there are two attackers on f6, the queen and bishop. Without any worries, black can capture on f6. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. And no, I meant more of g takes f6. I think instead of ef6, but I think I think there's a small lag when I'm following the moves you're making on the board, but logic is, yeah.
Then rook a to d8 is played on the board.
Yeah, so kind of, both of us, I mean, you predicted rook a d8, right? Yeah.
Because
So,
it's dominating the position. It's
yes,
pressurizing
absolutely.
white king.
Yeah, and rook a c1 cannot come. First of all, the rook would actually love to come to c1 from a1 if possible, but the knight is so strong on d3, rook c1 is not possible. And we see rook b1 being played on the board. Yeah.
Yeah. Rook a
So,
rook a to b1 is played on the board.
so this kind of reminds me of there used to be a Fritz version long ago. So Fritz is basically this computer engine
Yeah.
which is still around, right? I think Fritz 8 or Fritz 7, if I'm not wrong, which was like long ago, like more than 15 years ago. There used to be this setting where one of the engines would just keep on going capturing pawns. And it would say like even if I get checkmated, I get checkmated with this like a stomach full of pawns kind of logic. So by going rook b1, Jacobo is basically saying even if I do get checkmated or if I lose this game, at least I'll be materially up, by a pawn.
Yeah.
So he's trying to hold on to that extra pawn, so that he's just trying to see what he can do. And what do you think here, Adrit? How would you proceed after rook b1 if you're playing black?
Now I think bishop to c5.
Possible. I hope you have calculated what might happen if knight takes c4.
Knight takes c4. Yeah. And then takes means I takes the bishop.
Okay.
Then knight takes my bishop. Then
Yes.
I will just pin the knight.
With what move? Queen where?
Queen to c5.
Yeah, it's a very strong idea actually because there's no good way to defend the knight on e3 because
Yeah.
the bishop on b7 is defending the e4 square and knight on d3 is controlling the e1 square. That's certainly a line to consider, bishop c5. It's a possibility. So I think here, if I have to take a guess, what might be running in Esipenko's mind, he might be just figuring out, okay, is there any forcing draw? For a brief second, I thought there was a forcing repetitive draw, but then I realized it wasn't. I thought there was bishop c8 here, and if queen e4, just come back bishop b7. But then I realized there is queen takes c4. Imagine if there was only queen f5 and no queen takes c4, Esipenko would have played it in an instant here. He would have just repeated queen e4, bishop b7, queen f5, bishop c8, and taken a draw. But currently it is not possible as the c4 pawn is hanging. So, but first, when I looked at the position, bishop c8 was what came to my mind, but it's not a great move, as I just said. And hey, Adrit, your move is on the board. Bishop c5 is played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I think white means will not take the bishop because I will recapture it back with my queen and give a check. So I think he will take the free pawn at least.
But as we saw, that's not a free pawn. No, knight c4 is not free. You
Yeah,
actually end
not
up
free,
losing
but
the knight.
like he has to like no other move is there possible for
Why
him.
not? Why not bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, and go like king h2, something like that?
as you predicted, sir, king h2 is played. Means
Yeah.
after
What do you think here, Adrit? As black, how can black keep the pressure or keep the initiative going? Guess some ideas here. I think Queen E3 was played in the game, or
yeah,
is it
yeah,
analysis?
queen e3 was played. Queen e3 was
Yeah.
played.
So, basically, the queen is closing in on the white king here,
Yeah,
right? And queen E2 check is going to be like kind of dangerous. Yeah.
yeah,
There is pressure on the F3 knight, D2 knight, and white cannot go rook B E1. White would really want to play rook B E1, but the knight on D3 is so strong that it controls the E1 square. And to the audience, if knight takes C4 is played, there is a small little cute check that black will give with queen E2, forcing the king to move to H3 or something, and then play bishop takes F3, and basically black can, white can resign. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's will happen if knight takes C4. It's not a free pawn on C4. That's point number one. And the kind of I have a guess that most likely white will play queen h3 here, so that if you go queen e2, he can go queen g2 and cover the check. I think that is what Jacobo would most likely do. I'm not saying it's a great defensive plan, but there's not much that he could do in this situation. And after queen h3, I see some. Actually, there's actually a very nice idea. I don't know if maybe the audience you can try to guess that idea. Queen h3. Can you find a nice tactic for black after queen h3?
means who played, white or black? Can you tell
If
me?
black plays queen h3, if white plays queen h3, how can black exploit that? And another thing, Adrit, are we seeing this game from white's perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Can we maybe flip it to black's perspective? I
Okay,
think
okay.
that might be
Uh,
better.
yeah.
So to all the viewers who are watching this position, that's some nice tactic if white goes queen h3 here. Look at all the amazing pieces that black has and look at all the weakness that white has and try to combine the both and see the tactic here. So any
I
initial ideas right now, Adrit, after queen h3 that you can think of? Queen e3, queen h3.
yes, sir. Give me 1 minute. I am.
Yeah, yeah, take your time, take your time. And to the audience, we are currently looking at this position after queen e3, which was played in the game. If Yakubov decides to go queen h3, what will happen? And I've spotted a very nice
I think
tactic.
knight takes f4, threatening the queen and opening
Possible.
the line for the rook.
Knight f4 is possible, but g takes f4. And then if the pawn captures the knight,
Then rook takes uh, d2, knight takes d2, queen takes
hmm?
d2. Then
Yeah.
the no king can go to g1.
Yeah, king can go to g1, and if you go queen d4 check, that will be rook f2, and the checks would be stopped there. So the line that, yeah, and white will defend, and white has a slight material advantage here, exchange up equal number of pawns. So definitely not in favor of black here. So the line that it's a good try, good forcing moves that you played. But instead, what I think is instead of knight f4, if you just go back, we'll just finish the line and come back
Yeah,
to the live game. If queen h3, I think it's knight f2 here. The point of knight f2 being after queen h3,
yeah,
um, you know, white if white goes queen to g2, then it is the rook takes d2 there. So are you following the variation, Adrit?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Queen g2 to defend the f3 knight. Yeah,
yeah.
and then rook takes d2, exploiting the pin from a8 to h1.
I have done it. Means
Yeah. So
variation.
after rook d2, f2 is also defended. That's another beauty of rook d2. The f2 knight is protected by the rook. f3 is hanging. Knight g4 check is threatened. So in all situations, it's just resignation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So this would have happened if Queen h3 has had played, but as we see, Queen h3 did not get played in the game. I think White played g4. Yeah.
yeah,
So we are coming close to that 30 to 35 move prediction. Yeah, we are on move 24. Do you still think the game will end by 30 to 35?
yeah. The game will end by 30 to 35.
And do you think Esipenko will take a draw, or do you think he'll try to win this game as well, Adrit?
He will try to win this game because the position is fully dominating by black.
Absolutely. I don't think he's just going to take a draw here because it'll help him. I mean, he'll seal his candidate situation. I think he's just going to win because it's such a huge advantage. And it's a very good example for a lot of the viewers who are tuning in. Material is not the only thing in chess. Piece activity, but more than piece activity, it is king safety. So even if you currently look at the position on the board, and if you count the number of pawns, white is one pawn up. But are we talking like white has a great position? Absolutely not. We are talking from a perspective that white's in a big danger, and the reason why white's in a big danger, because white's king is extremely weak. And another thing is black's pieces are very active. There is no comparison for the black's queen on e3 in comparison to the white's queen on f8. So active, the queen on e3. And you cannot compare the d3 knight to any of white's knight. And you cannot compare the b7 bishop to any of the white's knight, because black's bishops and black's minor pieces, major pieces, are absolutely dominating in this position, that it's just like
Yeah,
pretty much bad. Yeah, so this is the major thing why you should not go after material. And I also see a very nice cute little mate. Maybe you can show it to the viewers. Black can consider playing something like rook d4 here, and if white plays knight takes d4, then it is queen takes d2 check, king
can you tell
g1 or
from
king.
the first? Wait a second. Can you tell from the first the variation line you are talking about?
I'm currently talking about the move after g4 that was played on the game.
Yeah. G4
So for
after
g4, rook to d4,
rook to
rook
d4.
d8 to d4. threatening rook takes f4.
Yeah.
And if white plays knight takes d4, then queen takes d2 with a check. The king has to move to g1 or g3 or h3, either of the three squares. And I'm pretty sure the viewers can find the mate in one there.
Yeah.
Yeah, queen g2. Yeah, so bringing one more piece into the attack basically by doing rook d4. And you're also threatening rook takes f4 in the process. I'm not saying this is the only win, but this is a very nice win that I see immediately on the board. Maybe he might play it actually. If he plays it, it's a very stylistic win if he does play rook d4 here. What do you think? Will he play rook d4, Adrit, or do you think he'll do something else?
I think he will find the move rook to d4.
I also think there's another thing that most likely is running in back of Esipenko's mind. I think he's figuring out if he can just trap the queen by any means on f5 or somewhere there. He's
Yeah.
because the queen is in very dangerous situation right now. And we are on move number what 24.
If
I think we might not even reach 30. I think 27 or 28 the game will be over.
yeah.
And so that basically means Esipenko, even though I'm calling it a bit early, but Esipenko will be the third, um, I mean, like winner of the third spot and basically qualifies
For the
to
candidate.
the candidates. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have any favorites in the candidates, Adrit? Have you seen all the other qualifiers for candidates who are all qualified?
My
Who do you
favorite is
think?
Hikaru Nakamura. My favorite.
Okay, so you believe Nakamura has a good chances to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so as of now, the players who are, kind of like, I mean, the kind of the full list of candidates would be out after the completion of this game, kind of. So one spot is Caruana is in the candidates.
Yeah.
Another one is Anish Giri because Anish Giri won the FIDE Grand Swiss few months ago. The other candidate is Matthias Bluebaum. Wei Yi and Sindaro, we know they've qualified. And most likely Nakamura would qualify in terms of average rating. That's going to be Nakamura. And FIDE circuit, there is very high probability Pragnananda, or we call Preg from India. So he'll be the most likely the only representative. I think he is the only representative from India for the candidates this time around. We won't be seeing Arjun because Arjun did lose
Yeah.
uh, to Wei and got knocked out early on in this match in the World Cup. So it's basically Caruana, Giri, Blue Bomb, Wei, Sindarov, and I'm counting Esipenko as well. And then it is Nakamura and Preg. So it's a very interesting candidates because there are some players who are not that elite in terms of rating. Like Blue Bomb is not exactly 2700 yet. Even Esipenko is 2690, not like above 2700 immediately kind of thing. But I'm pretty sure after this tournament he's above 2700. He has, I think, has had a historic rating of about 2700. Uh, I have a feeling,
Knight.
I think. Sorry,
Knight
they played a.
played on the board.
Oh, so he went knight c1. So he's going for a similar checkmate, yeah. So if the rook
Yeah.
takes c1 something, rook takes d2 is going to come. Yeah, knight c1 is also a very nice flashy way to win. And my pick in the candidates, I think, is Caruana. I mean, he's like a veteran for the world championship and also for candidates, having played so many candidates. I strongly feel Caruana's chances are the best, this candidates to win. Anish Giri also, but I have my pick would be Caruana for this candidates. Of all the players, he would win. But we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting tournament, no doubt about it, based on the players who have qualified so far. Do you think Yakubo will resign here, Adrit, or do you think he'll
I
play a few more moves?
I think he will resign.
Okay, let's see. I mean, if White does want to defend, does White have any chance here? So, for example, if I play knight takes c4 in this position, trying to capture the pawn, what exactly happens then?
Then I think queen to e2 check, and
Okay,
then king will go to g1, then bishop takes the knight.
okay. Yeah, that's very much a possibility. That's, I think, the winning line anyway. Queen e2, king
Yeah,
g1, bishop f3, threatening queen g2. Yeah, and so that's why knight c4 would be pretty bad in this situation. And what if queen c2 is another question to think about. If queen c2 trying to defend the d2 knight, most likely what will happen is black would play queen takes f4 check, and if the king goes to something like king g1, then knight e2 check is possible, that kind of thing. So queen moving to c2 is also terrible because f4 pawn is
yeah,
completely unprotected and can be captured, and there is no other way to really defend the d2 knight. I also have a strong feeling he's going to resign here. I think he's just kind of um, like he realizes the game is over, Yakubo. He's just trying to maybe see if there's any last attempt he could try to keep the game going. He's had a great tournament. No one really thought he would come this far into this tournament. But yeah, in semifinals as well as for the third place match, in semifinals he was beaten by his own countryman Sindaro, and now most likely going to get knocked out by Sipeng or like losing the third place match. But still, he had a fantastic tournament. He's beaten some great players to reach all the way up to semifinals, and I mean, and yeah. So let's see if White resigns. Game's over by move 24, not even 30. Yeah,
yeah,
and a great example of activity triumphing over material. Activity and king safety triumphing over material. To our subscribers, if you're currently watching the channel, um, we have a lot of content on chess improvement on Chess Gaja's channel, close to 1,000 videos and shorts. So I'm sure you can find a video or a short that's suited to your level, suited to your chess understanding and time availability. So please check out the channel. You can find different content videos, chess education videos, chess entertainment videos, 3-minute chess improvement videos, longer format, for example, yesterday on Chessgaja's channel, which is like 24th of November, we had a video close to 20 to 22 minutes on, you know, questions that generally players or students ask on chess improvement. I had answered them personally with my perspective on the different chess improvement logic and all of it. So definitely check that out, those kind of videos. It'll really help you a lot in your chess improvement journey. And if you are more for chess entertainment purposes, there are a lot of such videos as well we have. You can definitely check those out as well. Yeah. I think Adrit, someone on chat had asked, not sure what, I think it's Bengali. They've asked Adrit
Yeah,
Cheskel cheese. Is it Bengali or Hindi? I'm not
yeah,
sure. I
yeah.
think they're
Bengali.
talking to you. Yeah. So to our viewers, let us know what are, whom do you think will win the match tomorrow in the tie breaks between Wei and Sindaro? Who's your pick and who's your favorite to win the match? Let's see. But I think, has he
Rook,
played any move on the board?
rook b takes c1.
Ah, okay, he has played rook takes c1. But I think we were expecting rook takes d2, right, on the board
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
yeah.
And after rook d2, king g3.
And rook takes d2 is played.
Yeah. I think he's going to go king g3. Yeah, we see
Yeah,
that also being
king
played. And what if how do we win here? What is the idea is a good question because it does look like the king is somewhat defended by the rook and the knight next to the king, but it is still in a very, yeah, we have queen e2 on the board,
yeah,
basically threatening mate in one on g2. And if you go rook g1, it is queen takes f3 and it's a checkmate. To defend g2, but you get mated on f3. If you don't defend g2, you get mated on g2 itself. Yeah.
yeah,
Knight e1 might be a defensive idea, but then you get checkmated on h2. Queen h2 is a mate. So whatever you do, you get checkmated here. And let's see if Yakubov resigns here.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yakubu.
game is over. So yeah, so what's your overall, I mean, analysis of this game or today's day of play, Adrit?
Like peace activity is the major reason to attack. Peace activity will be very helpful to attack for attacking players.
True, true. And anything else you want to add to that? What's your take on the way he versus um, Sandarov's game? Anything? You thought they'd fight it out, or you thought they would make a quick draw today when you
I
started
thought
the
Sindarov would be fine. I mean, would fight
fight?
the
Okay.
spot.
Yeah, so we had two completely contrasting games today. Sindaro Vei, right from move five, I called it, it's going to be a draw, very quick draw. And because the moment Vei played knight takes d4 on four knights, that line is literally, I'm sure it's not called like a draw variation, but that's kind of the unofficial name you can give it to it. Officially, I think it's some other name, but it's called like a draw variation because white literally forces equality in that line. And But I do remember, as I was saying earlier in the stream, there is a game by Kasparov. I think he'll push for a win with black in that line long ago. And coming to this game between Yakubov and Esipenko, when you take Yakubov had to take some opening risks, not so good opening choices, but he didn't have much of an option. He cannot play normal theory because he had to play for a win, but that backfired very badly because I mean, the knight on e5 was a very poor move, and it all started with d3 and then follow it up with knight e5, and he could not recover from that at all. Like very clean victory by Esipenko, I would say. He just like exploited that weakness of knight e5. And that is why Catalan is kind of very popular there, because you take control of that e5 square with the d4 pawn push in the opening. And in Catalan, you often see knight f3 to knight e5. But there, the knight is very secure on e5 because the pawn is on d4. But in this game, the knight really struggled to find safety on e5 because the pawn was on d3. And then Esipenko very clinically, I think, just exploited the weaknesses and the drawbacks of White's opening and managed to beat uh, and get his spot in the candidates. So congrats to Esipenko for getting his spot in the candidates. So we have all the three candidate spot winners of from this World Cup. But still, there's one more day of play remaining because we still have yet to figure out who is the World Cup champion 2025 edition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Adrit. So I think we can wrap up today's video. Do you want to add any final things before we wrap up the video?
No.
Not really. So to the viewers, we hope you like the videos, and please do share your feedback on the comments below the video, like how you liked it, and watch the other videos in Chess Gaja channel. And if you're looking for chess improvement, there's a lot of videos on the channel. Also, do check out Chess Gaja's social media handles or newsletters. There are a lot of chess improvement content that we provide, not just on YouTube, but in our newsletters, in our LinkedIn pages, in our social media pages, Facebook pages, everywhere. And so follow our Instagram page, Facebook page, Twitter page, wherever. And we also have a WhatsApp community where we share some chess improvement, or a WhatsApp kind of like a channel, not community, a channel. So if you haven't joined that, please do join all of it so you can stay updated on latest chess news, chess updates, and everything. So that's all from me today. And